this is Jared, and this is Kidtalk.
Kidtalk is where we interview people who make games, design games,
And pretty much anyone who likes games.
yeah. And today we're interviewing Mr. Kyle Ferrin, who does the art for ledergames.
Hi.
Hi,
How are you doing?
I'm good. Not too bad.
What's your favorite leader game?
What's my favorite leader game? I like them all for different reasons. I like Vast because it was my first big game that I ever did. And I've probably drawn a lot of stuff for Vast. And then I like Root because I've probably drawn the most Root stuff out of anything.
Root's a pretty big game.
And we have it. It's right behind me.
It's right. My Roots are right behind me too. All of my stuff is
right there.
This area on the board game shelf. And then I have my stuffed animals for Root up here.
I see like a little dragon right behind your head.
Yeah, that's I'll show you one more. Is that okay? I'm walking around. So this is one of the reasons I like Root is because I got to help make stuffed animals for it, which is
I like the mouse and the vagabond.
Yep. And probably we'll make more of those because those are pretty fun to do. And then the dragon is just from Dungeons and Dragons. So just one of the ways that I got into drawing for board games is I draw people's Dungeons and Dragons characters. And I still play that with my friends over Zoom sometimes.
Did you actually make the stuffed animals, or did you get them?
Or did you just do the art for them?
I did the art for them. So I did turnarounds. So the same kind of way as when you do 3D modeling. I drew like the raccoon from the front, and then from the side, and from the back. And I drew individual pieces like the arms and stuff. And then I picked color swatches to make sure that when we sent them to the people who were going to sew them all together, that they knew the exact colors that I wanted. So I did all the designing part, but I didn't do any of the actual sewing. If I did the actual sewing, they would look a lot different.
How long ago did you start doing the art for leader games?
I want to say that I started drawing for Vast in 2016. It was called a different name then. It was called Trove.
Trove?
It was called Trove, like a treasure trove. And Patrick Leader, who designed the game with another guy named David Somerville, they emailed me, and they had got some art of mine, some goblins that I drew for a different thing, and they said, "We really like your goblins. Do you want to work on this game for us?" And I said, "Okay, sure." And so I started drawing Trove, and then after a while, we learned that there was a video game that was called Trove, and we didn't want to try and fight them over a name, especially with our first game. So we thought, oh, we'll just call it something different. So we ended up calling it Vast, and I still worked for a different company where I was designing big inflatable obstacle course things. If you've ever heard of the Great Inflatable Race, it's like a 5K where people go on bouncy houses and stuff. I designed a bunch of the bouncy houses and obstacle courses for that.
That sounds really fun.
It's pretty cool. I really like American Gladiators and Wipeout and all those type shows. And so that I got to make some of those kind of things. And so that was a really fun job, but not as fun as board games. So when Vast did pretty well, then Leader Games hired me, and I was the first employee at Leader Games. And then everybody else, like our marketing and accounting, and even Cole, who designed Root, he was hired after I was. So that was like 2016, and then 2017 is when I stopped working at my other job and just started working full-time for Leader Games, and I've been doing that ever since. So it's been a little bit now.
How long ago did you start doing the art for Fort?
So Fort was probably about a year ago. We had Grant Rodiek, who designed a different game called SPQF. And it had animals in it that were wearing armor and swords and stuff. And we really liked how the game played. And we thought, I bet Leader Games would publish this game and it would work for our audience. But then when we were playing it, we thought, we don't want to trick people and make them think that this is a Root card game. Because it's not. It's pretty different. So we thought, how can we change it and make it more so people can still tell it's us, but that it's a different kind of game. So we came up with this kind of like kids building forts kind of concept, and that's how we ended up making that. I don't know if do you guys watch like Craig of the Creek? Have you watched that show before?
No.
Oh,
We
I really
have-
like.
We have fort right here.
You have the game too.
Mhm.
There's some cartoons that are like called when I was a kid that were like called Ed, and Eddie, and some other ones like that where kids are just playing in their backyards and stuff. And I grew up playing night games. We'd like go play kick the can or sardines or a bunch of outside games. So we thought we want to make a game where it's based around kids that are building forts, and that just seemed to fit pretty well. So that's for about a few months. I was just drawing pictures of kids and background stuff and picking colors and making icons for fort.
How involved were you in making fort? Like, did you just do the art and then someone else used the art on the pieces, or did you also help make the pieces for it?
So as a general rule, I don't do many of the game mechanic stuff at all. We have really good designers and developers on our team. So the lead developer for this game is named Nick Brockman. And so he was in charge of taking SPQF and making it into Fort. So I designed all the icons. So like if you look on any of the cards, I just have it right here. I'll just show you. But if you look on any of the cards and you see, example. So like the glue bottle or the little hand or the toy icons, I drew all that stuff. Like this icon, that's me too. But I didn't do any of the rules or rule book themselves. We have people who are much better at that than me at doing that part. Sometimes at work I'll help do play testing. So like if they play a game on Tabletop Simulator or something right now, since we can't meet together as easy, and since I live far away, then I'll help with that. But mostly I just am involved with the theme and the art. And there's usually so much of that to do that I don't really have time to to do any of the game design stuff.
Well, we can't show you any of the cards because actually there's nothing in the box.
Yeah,
It's
we're
just
playing
empty.
it right now.
We were playing
It's like,
right now, and
then just send you an empty box.
it's in the game room.
Yep. Well, that's a good place for it. A game in the game room.
We play the games as a family in the game room.
But did people like give you the parts of it and ask you to do the art for it on that, or did you like do the art and then they added that to the like play mats and the pieces?
So what would happen usually, like I'll kind of tell you my process. So for Fort, Nick, who was developing it, he gave me a big list. He just sent me a big list on the computer of all the names of the kids. And so it would say Sparky, or it would say Doodles.
Or Kitty?
Whatever. Kitty, yep. And it would have their name, and then it would kind of tell me one thing about them or kind of how they work. So here's a good example. So this card, I would just get this information, or it would say, we need this person to be named Chef, and then I'll tell you what their power was. It's like their power was, for every book card you use, they get pizza, and if you have skateboards, then you can get pizza too. And so this guy is a book card, but he's mostly concerned about you getting more food. And so I thought, well, what can I draw for that? That's like a kid thing. So I got in my sketchbook and I drew this picture of a kid with a microwave who looks really cool. Like he's your friend with the microwave. And so I just draw that in my sketchbook, and then I scan it into the computer, and then I color it in the computer, just with my drawing tablet. And then I would make sure it was cropped right so it would fit on a card. And then I would just put it in a big folder on the computer so Nick could have access to that. And then I did that with, all 50 something cards. So we just take every single character, and just their name and their power, and then try and find something that that kind of fit, and then I'd send it to them. I don't do any of the actual printing on the cards or anything. That's all still done at a factory, but that's how I got to contribute.
Okay, so they didn't give you a piece and ask you to do the art on that. They just asked you to make the art for a card, and then they put that on a card.
Yep, they just tell me how big the card needs to be, and then I just make sure everything's the right size in the file that I sent them.
How do you do the art for the box?
The art for the box is kind of the same thing, where I just need to know how big the box is going to be. So I printed at the right resolution, which just means to make sure it's not blurry. Because if I draw something that's this big and then they have to stretch out the picture on the whole box, then it will be blurry. So I make sure it's this big or a little bit bigger. And then I make sure that we have art for the sides of the box. And then our graphic designer makes sure that everything is in the right place. So on this, Nick did the graphic design on this, and I think Patty Hyun at work, she helped with that stuff too. Then they make sure they have all the information on the box for like how many players, how much time it takes to play. And then I make sure we have icons for those things, and that's how the box comes together. And then usually our rules editor, Josh, who writes the rules, he will help write some copy or like all the words that go on the back of the box. And then we'll have people do either a digital mock-up or some professional photography of what the game looks like to put on the box. So if you're at the store, you can pick it up and see what's inside without having to open it.
But you said that there are other graphic designers in it, like in the ledergames. What do they do?
So that's kind of a funny question. So like I think about half the people at ledergames have worked or know some graphic design. So Cole, who works on Root, he knows enough graphic design to make cards and put together like the Root game a lot. And Marshall, who is even our sales guy, he has a background in doing art and graphic design. So we all have a little bit of that. And I actually went to school to do graphic design, and mostly it was for making posters, or some people did website stuff. So I know enough that I can make logos and things, and I used to work in lots of graphic design jobs, but now I just do the art. So the people who work at ledergames doing the graphic design, they make sure that all the text is in the right place, that the boxes are formatted, so when people look at the cards, they can see where everything is supposed to go, and what order your turn is. And so they are designing like everything that's like a square. Everything that's not drawn art is something that a graphic designer is putting together. Also, the rule book has to be graphic designed. Anything that's like text format. So like, putting together all the glossary and all that stuff is graphic design. And that's stuff that I know how to do, but I don't do at work. We got other people to do that full time, so I can do art full time. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? So they do all this stuff, and I do all the fun stuff.
What other ledergames have you done the art for?
So ledergames, before I worked for Patrick, he made one game that was called Trick or Treat. That's like a Halloween game. And that was before I even knew Patrick, and before ledergames was like a company with other people who worked on it. So I didn't work on Trick or Treat. That was somebody else who drew that. But then I've done all the other ones. So should I just grab a pile and show you?
If you want.
Yeah, they're all right behind me for this express purpose. Give me one second.
Looks like there's a lot.
There is a lot. I'm still pretty new at this compared to some of the guys like Ian O'Toole, who's drawn a bajillion games. But for one company, this is a good chunk. So Vast is my first game, and then this is this is my first kind of big box game, and then let's see. Oh, there's even more back there. I forgot to get. So back there on the shelf, I also did
There seem to be 4 that have the same name.
Yes, there's Vast, the Crystal Caverns, and then Vast, the Fearsome Foes, which is back there. That's an expansion that I did. And then I got to design some miniatures for that somebody else sculpted. And then I did Vast, the Mysterious Manor, which is kind of this is probably the biggest game I've ever drawn. This has a whole bunch of miniatures and things in it. I got to draw these skeletons and spiders and kind of haunted house stuff. And then this is an expansion for that one. This is a Haunted Hallways game that has even more skeleton stuff and haunted house stuff. That's pretty fun. This is just kind of a skinnier one because it's just an expansion for that. And then I got to do Root, which you have with you. This is kind of probably my most popular one that I've got to work on. Yep, you have it right behind you too. And then I got to do, at the same time as Root, I made the Riverfolk expansion. So that's these guys.
We don't have that one.
Yeah, this one's a little bit hard to find. We made a lot of them, but they sold out. So I think we're in the process of making more. But I'm lucky to have mine, I think. and then the newest one that came out, I'll hold it right side up about that, is the Underworld expansion, and that has moles and crows and stuff. That's all the games I've worked on for ledergames. I also have one other. Let's see. This one's still in the plastic, but I do have an open one that my kids play all the time. But this is Dungeon Mayhem. This is a kind of a D&D card game for kids that where you fight each other. So I drew this one too. That's all the games I've done.
How many games do you have?
That's all of them. I don't know how many. I haven't counted it in a little while.
Looks like about 100.
It's probably about 100. They're organized by player count.
They're actually probably more than 100.
Yeah, I got so these are my like 1 and 2 player games, my kind of classic and old school games, or things that are too big to fit other places, and then 2 player, 3 player, 4 player, 5 player, 6 player, and up. And then all the stuff at the bottom is like things I have big sets of that I need to keep together. So Dominion or Zombicide and things like that I have to do. And then over here I have Blood Bowl, which is a whole other. That's a football game where you play with orcs and elves and things. And that's kind of silly. I have no one to play it with me, but I just play. I like painting miniatures.
Are you working on any other games you can tell us about?
So right now, probably the biggest ones that I'm working on are Oath, and that's the next one for ledergames that we're working on that we did a Kickstarter for. Oath is, I can show you some of the pieces for that. Oath is a very weird game that we're working on. So this is like the prototype for the map.
Whoa.
So I'm working on redrawing that because this is all just kind of placeholder stuff. But it's going to roll up inside the board. It's a fantasy type setting, so you got people with swords and magic and animals and stuff.
It already looks really cool without having you said it was a map?
Yep, that's the map. So it's going to be in the box, and you're going to be able to roll it out. We did some rollout maps for Root, and then we decided that we wanted to try and make one that fit in a box. So yeah, these are some of the pieces for Oath. I got to design all this stuff.
Is it going to be that big?
Yeah.
Is it going to be that big?
The mat.
Yep, the mat is going to be exactly this big. It's going to look different, but it's going to...
It already looks pretty cool.
It's going to be this big. Thanks. It's going to... All of this stuff at the top is just written right now with like text, but I'm going to probably ink it by hand. So I'm going to get one of my fancy pens and do some kind of calligraphy type stuff, and then I'm going to redraw the background. So you don't have these like big seams you can see right here where the art looks like it's copied and pasted. It's because it is. So that's all placeholder right now, but that's my big thing that I'm working on. Oath has almost 200 cards in it that are all different. And so every day I wake up and I look at my big list of cards and I think, how many of these can I get done today?
But
that's what I do. So then I just sit in this chair, or I have a drawing table right there that sometimes I sit in. Most of the time I sit in this chair because this chair is more comfortable. And then I draw in this sketchbook right here.
Before we started interviewing you, our mom told us, like, we read something that said that what you do in one game of Oath affects the next game. Mm-hmm. Are you able to tell us anything about that?
Yeah. So, do you guys play any video games?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like when you save your game, so you can pick it up later and continue on where you were before.
Yeah.
So Oath kind of does that. So it's a board game where you play it. And then if you win, let's say you win by using a lot of magic, and that's like you play a lot of magic cards to win, then the next game, whoever plays it, even if it's not you, when they roll it out, the cards and the map and everything will be affected by what you did. So it'll be like a more magic world. Or like, let's say use a lot of army, like sword guys in one game, then the next game will have more sword guys in it by default. So the game kind of remembers how you played it before and will save it for the next time you play it. So it'll
it's
make
like
it
a video game. It's like a video game on a board.
Kinda, because if you get a copy of Oath and I get a copy of Oath and you play it with your friends and I play it with my friends, if we play it 2 or 3 times and then we put our copies next to each other, my game is going to look completely different than what your game looks like. It's going to be like 2 different worlds that went in different directions. So it's pretty neat. There's not a whole lot of games like that. So, but
are you able to reset it? Like reset back to the beginning?
Because all the cards are numbered. So there'll be kind of like the starting deck that everybody starts with. And so you'll be able to look at the game and be like, okay, I'm just going to put these cards back in the start, and then you could start from there. So you could do that if you want to, but really I think what's going to make the game fun is doing it that way. So
I want to be an artist when I grow up. Can you tell me some of how you do your art? What can you help me do now to make me a better artist in the future?
So probably the 2 things, because I have kids that want to be artists too. What I would say is the first thing is you practice. So if you want to get better at drawing, you're only going to do it by drawing a lot. So you learn to be prolific, which just means that you're drawing all the time. Not all the time, but a good bunch of the time. So if you have a sketchbook or something that you can draw in a lot, that'll help you. And you can know that not everything you draw is going to be perfect. I think sometimes I see people, especially grown-ups, when they try drawing, they get frustrated when it's not exactly how they want it the first time. That's okay. You can just start over and do it again. And that's the great part about a sketchbook, is that you don't need to show it to anybody. So if you're learning how to draw a cat, you draw a cat and it doesn't look very good, you just draw another cat. You draw another cat and you try and change it a little bit until you get what you want. And then all of those other cats that didn't look very good, you don't have to show them to anybody if you don't want to. You can just keep the one that turned out right. So the other thing that I would tell people who want to be artists is that you got to learn to look at things different. You have to learn to recognize shapes of things. So when I was 14, I had a watercolor teacher, and his name was Pete Peterson, and he would talk about drawing shapes. And so sometimes when you're drawing from your mind, you're drawing kind of what you remember something look like instead of what it actually looks like. And so one of the things he would draw is eyes. So if he had like his blank paper here, he'd say, what does an eye look like? And he'd say, well, an eye is like a circle and it has a dot in the middle and then another dot around it. And then it has eyelashes. And then he would draw it like that. And he'd say, that's a pretty scary looking eye. Not somebody who had eyes that looked like that. It would be scary. And so he'd say, look in a mirror and see what an eye actually looks like. An eye is mostly just like a shadow, and that part that is black is darker than the rest, and it's always kind of touching the top part. And then your eyelashes are so close together that unless you're really close, you can't really see them all individually like that. And so we'd say, like, that's probably more what an actual eye looks like, because you're looking at the shapes instead of just thinking about the pieces. And the same thing goes for like drawing landscapes. If you draw a mountain and you think that's what a mountain looks like, and then it has trees, and trees grow straight out of the ground, so there's a tree on a mountain. Like, that's not actually what a tree on a mountain looks like. That's just what we think about a tree on a mountain looks like. So it's important that you use references, or you look at pictures and you try and draw what they look like that way. And then when you're doing cartoons, you can change it however you want. So you could do a crooked tree or a funny eyeball if you want, but it's important to learn those basics about what stuff looks like from the shapes. So that's what I would say, is that practice a lot and learn to look at shapes.
Do you have any questions for us?
What kind of stuff do you like drawing?
I like just drawing things that I like drawing things that I'm looking at, because if I'm looking at something, I can draw almost what it looks like exactly.
I just like drawing like funny things, like giants like holding a sword and then falling over.
Or just making things for his game.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, if I would have told myself as a kid that I would have a job drawing things with swords, I'd be pretty happy about it. Because most of what I draw is stuff with swords, and stuff that I look at. When I was little, probably younger than you guys, I would draw Garfield comics. I would look at pictures of Garfield, and then I would learn to draw him until I could eventually draw Garfield from memory. And if you look in Fort, I'll show you really quick.
At the Doodles?
Yeah, at Doodles. So there's a bunch of characters in Fort that are secretly pictures of ledergames staff. And the one that's me is Doodles. That's me when I was a kid. Yeah. So here's as Doodles. In one hand, I'm holding Garfield, and then in the other hand, I'm holding a buff guy with a sword, and he has really big legs, because that's how I used to draw buff guys with swords. Is I'd give them way too big legs. Do you guys have any cartoons or anything that you like watching? Any favorite shows?
We like watching a show called Odd Squad that shows you like math.
Nice. Let's see. Have I watched Odd Squad? I'm trying to remember.
It's in PBS Kids.
On PBS Kids? Yeah. I don't know that I've watched Odd Squad. My kid's favorite PBS show is probably Wild Kratts.
We like that one.
Mm-hmm.
I like learning about animals, and then after that, I usually draw them.
What?
Or like make a small book about them.
Nice.
We even watch a show called PJ Masks. It's in a lot of things.
Yeah. PJ Masks. There's a PJ Mask.
It's actually even in Netflix.
Yep. We like PJ Mask. Okay. We've co-opted that song for a lot of things. So like when I'll make my son take a shower, we sing "Smell Good Boy, You're a Smell Good Boy."
What's your favorite game?
My favorite game to like play? Let's see.
It doesn't have to be a leader game.
Leader game? Okay, good, because I won't get in trouble. Probably my favorite one, if you were to ask me, could I play any game right now, I would probably play Galaxy Trucker. Have you guys played that one?
No.
No.
All right, I'll go grab Galaxy Trucker and show you really quick. It's pretty funny. So this is Galaxy Trucker. And Galaxy Trucker is a game where you make a spaceship out of basically garbage, and then it's like a truck where you have to take your stuff from one planet to another and try and make money. But because you're in space and your ship is made of garbage, you have to fly it through asteroids, or there's like bad guys who try and steal your stuff. And so as you're flying your ship blows apart. Stuff runs into it and falls apart. And so sometimes by the end, you get there and you only have like a tiny little ship left. And you can only sell the stuff that's still on your ship. Or sometimes your whole ship blows up and you don't get to sell anything. I really like Galaxy Trucker because it's just funny. Like everybody thinking, oh, I built such a good ship. And then one rock will come hit like the perfect spot and then half your ship will break off. And you're like, maybe I didn't do such a good job.
Like you have one like little antenna that's poking out and then it's just like a rock comes, breaks it off, and then your entire ship blows up.
Or you're like, I built a good ship. Where's my ship?
Oh, it's gone. Sometimes, like, because there's pirates and stuff, you build your ship so it has one cannon on the front, or you can build lots of cannons. And one time, I couldn't find any cannons because you're just picking up tiles from the same tiles everybody is. And so I only had one cannon on the very front of my ship. And I thought, this cannon has to last me the whole trip because it's the only one I have. And then the very first asteroid that came in from the side and bonked off my cannon. So I didn't have I didn't have any cannons, and I didn't do so good that time. So I really like Galaxy Trucker. It's pretty funny. That's probably one of my favorite. Yeah, do you guys have a favorite board game that you guys play?
Fort. I really like Fort now.
Mine is Deadly Doodles. Mine is Deadly Doodles. It's right here.
What's it called? Oh, Deadly Doodles? I'll have to check that out. That sounds fun. We're always looking for good kid games. A lot of my kids like to play a lot of dexterity games. So
what
we
does
like
that mean?
balancing games or flicking games with pieces that you stack up or knock over. So they really like animal upon animal.
Do they like suspend?
I don't know if they've ever played suspend. Is that the one where they have a thing that's hanging down from like the ceiling?
No, you have like little sticks that you put on and try to balance them.
And if you knock some over, and like if you knocked all of them over, you would all get them. You would get all of them.
Yeah, your goal is to run out of all of your sticks first without knocking anything over.
Yep, there's the good balancing games. That sounds fun too. My kids like those ones. Do you guys play any games just the two of you, or do you always play with your parents?
We do a lot of times just the two of us, but mostly we do all of us.
Do you guys ever fight when you're playing board games?
No.
Sometimes we don't agree on a board game that we want to play. Like sometimes sometimes Peyton wants to play one game and I want to play the other. And then we have to think of a game that has both of those, or we just don't play a game.
Do you ever start playing a game and then one of you says, "I'm done playing the game," and then the other person gets mad because you're done?
A few times. Like once a few times one of us says, "I don't want to play this right now," and the other one's just like, "Yeah, let's do that."
What does your dispute resolution look like? How do you stop fighting when you're fighting?
Most of the time it ends as let's go upstairs and play with Legos.
Or let's just finish the game.
Most of the time it ends as let's just finish the game instead because the game's almost over. And then there's a lot more going on in the game and the game's not almost over.
Yeah.
Can you tell I'm looking for ideas that I've experienced some of these things myself? That's funny. We my kids sometimes will play games and then someone will get bored and go, "I'm done," and just leave, and then everyone will say, "No, you're ruining the game. You have to finish." So that's funny.
There are a few games that it doesn't really change the game if someone gets out.
Yeah, that's true.
But only a few.
Probably the biggest hurdle that we're dealing with right now is that I have my three oldest are 9 and 7, and then one who's almost 5. And my almost 5-year-old is just he hasn't learned how to read yet. And so that makes it hard on my older girls because they want to play games like Sparkle Kitty or ones where they have to read.
Like Root?
Like Root. You definitely have to read. And then it makes it tricky when
Not this
they can't
game.
play.
I kept touching this game.
Because you
Yeah, I
think
didn't do
Root's straight behind
Carcassonne.
you.
Carcassonne's been around longer than I have.
Carcassonne is right behind me, not Root.
Yeah.
Root is right behind me.
You know, it's funny when we made Vast, the factory said, "How big do you want the tiles?" And we said Carcassonne sized, and they knew exactly what we were talking about because everybody knows that one. So
But
that's funny.
do you have any games that there's automas?
Like they play by themselves, or what do you mean?
You can play by yourself, and there's like a player that's not actually there that you like draw a card and you do what the card says for that player.
Yeah, we actually. Let's see. Yes, I do. I'm trying to think
Do you
where I
have- Do you have Scythe?
I don't have Scythe. I have it on my computer. I've played it on my computer, but I don't have the actual board game of Scythe.
The best way to
but
learn a
we,
game, the best way to learn a game that has Automa is to have another player help the Automa. Like you draw the card, and it normally goes
and
the
they
way the
do it.
Automa would, and the other player's doing the stuff that the Automa needs to do. That's how Peyton learned how to play Scythe.
I learned how to play Scythe by being the Automa.
That's cool. We have that for Root actually. I was just realizing that I don't have the box in here. It's in my storage room. So I'm gonna go grab it real quick and then I'll show you. Is that okay?
Okay.
All right, so we made that for Root. I forgot with Boxing. So I worked on this too. So this is the Clockwork expansion, and so it's like a robot for all of the different Root factions in the base game.
They look a little bit creepy.
Yeah, because
Yeah, because the robot.
the bunny has pink eyes.
Yep.
Right.
So there's the robot
It's a
Woodland
robot.
Alliance. There's the robot Vagabond up at the top, and so you could do that too.
I like the bird.
Thanks.
The bird looks really cool.
I know.
So you could
I
play
noticed
robot.
something.
What's
They're
that?
all in the same spots, like that.
As the regular Root. Yep.
Mhm. But except there's not a bunny here.
Yep. The Vagabond and the bunny are switched from how they would normally go.
That's a mouse. Not a bunny.
Yep.
So, are your kids able to play Fort, or are they too young?
We tried playing Fort 2 days ago on Sunday. And my 9-year-old was doing good, my 7-year-old was doing good, and my 5-year-old, after his first turn, he was done. He was bored. And he probably went to go play Legos like you do. So, which is apparently just part of the human experience if you guys are doing the same thing. But so
If you're
was a
bored
little
with
bit,
the name, go play Legos.
Oh, the main thing about Fort is that it's all icons, so you have to memorize what the different icons mean.
It's a lot easier when you have that little mat that shows you all of the icons.
Yep, little cheat sheet that tells you what all the pieces mean and do. Yeah,
I have to look at that a lot.
Yep, this is kind of like the key. I think once you've played 1 or 2 games, then you just memorize it and you know what all of them mean. But yep, so. Yep, I don't know if they're quite ready for Fort as a group, but I could play with my wife and play with my oldest kids. And
We're gonna ask you a couple would you rather questions.
Would you rather sleep every night in a human-sized nest in a tree or in a burrow underground?
It's kind of like this.
that's a good root-related question. I am a little bit afraid of heights, so I would probably sleep in a burrow in the ground. That sounds cool.
The only problem with sleeping underground is you could get wet while you're sleeping.
And there is no air.
Air if you live in a
Hopefully, I'm
cave.
not sleeping in like a casket. I would hope that it was at least like a cave.
Yeah.
No,
The
actually,
tricky part about would you rather is like
how
if
would
you're
you get
sleeping
in?
right
How would you get in?
How'd I get in?
in
Probably
something that wouldn't have an opening.
through the door,
Unless you
like
block,
a hobbit. Hobbits
Not-
live in the ground.
unless you just filled in your door.
Yeah, I think you're picturing like a flower pot. I'm not going to live in a flower pot. I was going to live in like a nice hole in the ground. 'Cause if the choice is between a nice hole in the ground and like a lame tree, or like the choices between a bad hole in the ground and a really cool tree house, then I think that affects my decision. But I'm gonna choose the ground probably.
Would you rather walk on the sky but never feel pain, or walk on Earth but always feel pain?
But in the sky, you don't have food, water, or you don't have food, water, or a place to live, but you won't die of thirst.
But I don't feel pain in the sky.
No.
I think I choose that. 'Cause even if I'm like starving, it won't hurt, right? I'll just be like, and then eventually I'll die. But if I'm on the ground just suffering all the time, I don't know. That doesn't sound too great.
Neither sound too great.
The other doesn't sound too great, but walking on the sky, I don't know. Maybe I'd miss everybody if I was up there by myself. So I don't know. That's a tough one. I think if I'm up there by myself, I choose ground. If I'm up there with other people, I choose sky. How about that?
Up there means everyone's up there.
Everyone's up there, but we're all painless.
And if you're so if you fell onto the earth, it wouldn't hurt until you stood up on the earth.
Is there a potential for falling in the skywalking situation? Like I'm in the sky feeling no pain, but there's always this like
It's backwards gravity.
I know.
I was gonna fall. That's funny. Well, hopefully, if I'm up there with a whole bunch of people, we can figure out the food situation. We can figure out some sort of air gardening.
You could just make a plane fly.
Maybe, or we could figure out how to fish for birds or something.
Wait a minute. If the gravity turns around, everything would go to the sky.
Yeah,
that would be a little bad. Like, I just go into the ceiling and just be like,
because trees would start falling, or just
flying,
or just a bunch of food went to the sky.
Okay, well that
I said no food.
We can eat that food.
Well, you could eat that food. You meant no food because how would you get food? But the gravity would turn around.
It's tricky.
Well, there's one more question. Would you rather be granted the answers to any 3 questions or be granted the ability to resurrect one person?
Oh, that's tricky. That got deep and serious real quick.
I would do 3 questions because one of those questions could be to resurrect someone.
No, you get the answers.
Can I resurrect someone? Yeah, I think
the answer would be no.
I don't think it's 3 wishes. Yeah, I would probably pick the answer one. I think that if I resurrected somebody, they'd come back and they might not be happy that I did that. So I'd probably pick the 3 wishes one, so we could
not 3 wishes,
3 answers,
or the three questions. Because if it's anything, I could ask something that happened a long time ago, like a history question that people don't know the answer to.
You could ask, have you watched Odd Squad?
Yeah. I could ask something for the future. I could do like I could figure out, who wins the Super Bowl and bet some money on it. There's lots of things you could do with questions. I think I do that one because of the creative potential of how you could ask questions. But you can
only do 3.
Yeah. So I'd have to think really hard about the 3 questions, but I think that'd be an easier call than trying to resurrect somebody.
Ears.
You're almost done.
Are my ears really red?
Sure. Think about if you're walking in the sky that you wouldn't even feel those headphones. You'd be painless.
Well, then the iPad wouldn't be right here, so we couldn't talk.
That's true. You wouldn't bring the iPad? I think the iPad would be the first thing I'd bring if I was up in the sky.
Well, the iPad would hit the ceiling and break.
Well, if I were just like grabbing the iPad to bring it in my room, I would just be like.
See, I think you guys are picturing like a starting position of like we're on the ground
floor,
and then we're suddenly up in the sky. That presents all kinds of problems.
Or if you were just walking, you would just be like just flipping, like just slowly flipping in the air.
Yeah, I think if you're afraid of heights, that whole situation becomes really scary. If everything.
Well, he needs to not be afraid of heights, so he's not scared when he's on top of the treehouse. But you're not as scared. You're
We have a
not.
tree house.
Well, you're not really scared.
You'll get used to it, huh? You'll get used to it. My daughter she doesn't like heights. One of my daughters, and she says when she's 2, and so when she's on something that's too high, she says it's too tippy. It's too tippy. So she'll go. We have stairs on a deck outside and stairs inside the house to go downstairs, and she won't go on the outside stairs. She likes to go on the inside ones because they make her feel they're less tippy. So.
Thanks for hanging out with us. It was really fun.
Thank you for giving me the advice for my art.
Yeah.
No problem. Hope it helps.
I could really use that advice.
Me too. We're all learning. Important to remember that we're all learning.
I'm looking forward to talking to you sometime soon.
Cool. Well, I hope you guys like Fort as much as I do, and thanks for talking with me too.
Bye.
See you later.
Bye. I'm going to think about that sky question all the time now. Bye.
Thanks for hanging out with us on this episode of Kidtalk.
It was really fun talking to Mr. Kyle about the robot route and even the sneak peek of Oath. So be sure to subscribe so you won't miss out on any episodes of Kidtalk.
See you soon.
Bye!